And thank you all very much for coming along this afternoon. So let's have a little look at the SCQF and workforce development. Can you see that okay? Yep, fantastic. Okay, so as I mentioned, my name is Nicola Smith and I am the Employer Support Lead at the SCQF Partnership. And please note down my email. I'll pop it in the chat as well so that you can get in touch with me if you want to find out more, take a little bit more time to look a little bit more deeply at the things we're just going to look at very quickly this afternoon to get a little introduction and flavour to. This, as I said, this is part of our SCQF Week webinar series. So if you want to tweet about it, to put something on LinkedIn, then please do. And we've got a couple of hashtags there that you can use. And please also link with me on, I'm more active on LinkedIn than I am on Twitter, although I do try on Twitter as well. So I would be very happy if you want to link with me to find out more about the work that we are doing at the SCQF. So the employment landscape in Scotland has, the qualification landscape in Scotland has changed significantly over the last 10, 20 years. And the SCQF is the framework which underpins the majority of your qualifications in schools, college and university. But also, because we have one framework that I'll show you in a little minute that underpins all of these qualifications, we can also bring in qualifications that are done within the community and in the workplace and by other learning providers, and we can have them all credit rated, benchmarked to the one framework. And what that allows you to do is it allows you to compare different qualifications being taken from a range of different places to each other and understand their worth in comparison to each other. So I help employers understand the SCQF, what it is, the range of alternative qualifications that are out there and how to compare them. I can also help you properly benchmark your job roles to the SCQF. And that can help you both when you're recruiting and also when you're looking at workforce development and development plans, helping people understand what they may need to do to progress to the next steps within your organisation and understand themselves better in terms of SCQF levels themselves. We can also help having your in-house training credit rated. If you would like your own training placed on the SCQF, then we can help you with that. And all of this we'll talk about in the next 15 minutes, all helps with recruitment and retention. So firstly, a little introduction to what the SCQF is. Apologies for those of you who were with me this morning. I know we have some repeat visitors. You'll have heard this before, but a little bit of consolidation never harms anybody. So the SCQF was created about 22 years ago. People across education from all areas, schools, colleges, universities, vocational skills-based qualifications and community learning, workplace learning got together and decided they needed a framework which brought all of these different things together in the one framework so that you could compare them to each other. In the past, the academic route has been seen as that gold standard, but it was felt that moving into this century, properly being able to understand and recognise those skills-based qualifications, the vocational qualifications, was felt that it was going to be even more important. So what the SCQF does is it allows you to have that parity of esteem between qualifications no matter where they come from. And it allows people to compare qualifications with ones that they maybe recognise a little bit better. This is really important, particularly for our young people in schools. The academic route only suits about 30% of our young people. And what we are trying to do is we're working, particularly we're in around over 2/3 of the schools in Scotland now. Sorry, just someone calling me there. We are working in over 2/3 of the schools in Scotland, as I mentioned, and we're helping them broaden out the range of qualifications that young people take. So not just offering the academic route, but offering qualifications that suit not just the way young people learn, but also the types of skills that employers need as well. So let's orientate ourselves to the SCQF. SCQF level 6, I always start at because the higher sits at SCQF level 6 and it hasn't changed in a long time. But of all the qualifications we have at SCQF level 6, only 7% are hires. So there's a 93% of other qualifications at the same level that wouldn't be recognised if you were, for example, recruiting at SCQF level 6. So moving up, we have level 7 is advanced hire. It's also HNC level, your first year at college or your first year at university as well. And that's also important because another reason the SCQF was created was to allow movement between different academic paths, different learning paths, to allow people to take different routes to where they want to get to, and to find the right type of learning that suits them, suits their needs, suits the needs of employers as well. So moving up, level 8 would be HND level. Level 9 would be an ordinary degree, 10 an honours, 11 masters and 12 a doctorate. So that helps you orientate yourself with, sorry, somebody keeps trying to call me. There we go. So I'll talk about the levels going down the way in a little minute. But because we have everything all benchmarked onto the one framework, this allows us to bring in other qualifications that are being done in the community, that being done by different learning providers, and also being done in workplaces. So for example, these ones here at level 6 are qualifications we can directly slot into the curriculum, which are more skills-based and more useful for employers if you're moving into different professions. So this one here, Comedy and Confidence, is a great one. It's done by quite a lot of schools in Glasgow, which helps people develop confidence if they're not going into a public-facing role, for example. So as you can see, there are around 11,500 different qualifications on the SCQF at any given time, and about 1,000 of these are these other qualifications that are done in areas that are not your mainstream qualification providers. So I said we'd have a look going down through the levels. So higher sits at level 6, hasn't changed its name for a long time, although that may change at some point soon. We're not too sure what's happening. Level 5 is where you will find National 5. Now, for those of you who don't have young people at school now and want to relate it to what you've done, that would be the same as a standard grade credit, so a 1 or 2 standard grade, or one of the upper passes at O grade. National 4 is named because it sits at SCQF level 4. Everything from National 5 downwards is. And it would be equivalent to a standard grade general or a lower pass at O grade. When, again, talking about the pathways that people find that suit the speed at which they are capable of learning, these intermediate steps were brought in because it was found that it was far too big a jump for people to go from foundation up to higher. So intermediate steps were brought in the 2000s to help with that. So you may see people coming to you with a range of these different qualifications. Looking across the rest of the UK and the Republic of Ireland, just to help you get a wee idea, we can compare our qualification framework to those in, well, the one here in green is the Republic of Ireland, who also have everything all in the one framework, so you can compare across between levels. And the other ones are the frameworks that are working in England, Wales and Northern Ireland. So again, you can see your GCSEs at A star to C, map across to a National 5, SCQF level 5. And at grades D to E, they're comparable to SCQF level 4. Your AS and A levels sit up here and they compare across to SCQF level 6. So that just gives you a wee bit of an idea of what the SCQF is and how it relates to learning and the types of qualifications that you will be aware of and you will know. So what we're here to talk about today is how do you use the SCQF in workforce development side of things. So for that, we have a particularly useful tool called the employer leveling tool. So you'll find this on our website, and I'll send out a leaflet later that gives you links to where all of these, where you can find all of this information. The employer guide will take you through how you can use the SCQF in workforce development, in recruitment, and also how to have your in-house programs credit rated. But let's have a look at this employer leveling tool. So just in the same way that we have one set of level descriptors that describes what a learner has to do in order to be able to achieve a qualification at each level, this document tells you what an employee looks like if they are working at each SCQF level from 2 up to 12. So this is a very useful tool for a range of different things. First of all, you can use it to benchmark your qualifications to the SCQF, benchmark your job roles to the SCQF. And that allows you to understand what type of person you're needing, what sort of qualifications they may have, or what sort of skills and experience you might be looking for if you're, for example, recruiting for that post. But it also internally lets people see if they're wanting to move up within your organization, what sort of level of learning, what type of training might I need, what type of experience do I need to get in order to reach those levels. So it's using the SCQF as your benchmarking for all your job roles. The other thing it's very, very useful for is helping both your employees and yourself know what each of your employees is capable of. It's really interesting that when I work with people and I talk to them and we look through this, people very often want to move up through the levels and find out which one describes them best. So we've actually made web pages out of these pages from the leveling tool, and we've made them into a know your level tool that's on our website. And it encourages people to jump in at the level that they've got qualifications at, and then keep moving up in levels until they find the one that describes them. You'll have many employees within your organisations who are working at a much higher level than their qualifications would suggest. I know many people who, in fact, don't have very many qualifications at all, but are working at those higher levels. They're easily working at levels 10, 11. But if they were then to apply for jobs, or people purely looked at them in terms of qualifications, they would certainly not see the whole picture of what they're capable of. So this is a very useful tool to help you work with your employees so that they recognise what they're capable of, and so that you know what they can do, and then you know how you can help them develop within your organisation to move up through these learning levels in a way that suits them. So, as I've said, there is one of these for each of the different levels. So, a few questions for you just to have a little think about. Do you know what qualifications and skills your employees have? Well, it's probably information that you gathered when they were recruited. That might have been a while ago. They may have done all sorts of things since then. Or do you recognise those alternative qualifications that we spoke about earlier? Maybe they've got a range of different qualifications that maybe are less easily recognised. If they've done anything that's on the SCQF, it will be on their certificate, so they can have a look and they'll find out that way. We also have a database on our website, so if it's been on the SCQF in the last 8 or so years, then you'll be able to find it in the database. So really important to understand not just the qualifications that they have, but also the skills that they have as well. Could you use that leveling tool that we've just spoken about with your employees as part of their PMR, PDR, whatever you call your process in your organisations, to really recognise what skills and experience they have alongside their qualifications? Do you know what level your employees are working at? So absolutely working through, do you know what they're capable of, what they can do? It's quite interesting. We do a training called RPL for Employers, which if you're interested in, please sign up for our newsletter on our website, and tick the workshops box, and you'll be the first to know about new workshops that are coming out. And it looks into this in a little bit more depth. And one of the people who was on this was telling me a story at the beginning of the pandemic. Everyone was suddenly working from home. She worked in a college. She was wanting to know if anybody had any particular skills that might be helpful to their colleagues at the difficult time. So she put out a note saying, please tell us about any qualifications or skills that you have that you think might be useful. And she was amazed by the range of things that she got back that she never knew about these employees that she'd been working with very closely. So she said that's something that she's going to repeat every few years just to see what's going on, because it's not just skills that you develop in the workplace, it's also skills from outside as well. So, do you know what level your employees are working at? And do you consider experience and learning level when you're planning your training? A lot of time and money can be wasted if you're buying in training or if you're developing training that's not at the right level for the person taking that training. If it's either too easy or too difficult, they're not going to be getting out of it what you need and what they need from it. Do you have skills training strategy within your policy for employees? Do you have a strategy in place to help your employees know where they're working at the moment, recognize their own skills and experience, and help them get to where they want to go within your organization? An organization that supports employees and supports them with their development is far more likely to hold on to those employees because they feel invested in. How do you plan for progression and succession? Can people see clear routes from where they are now to where they want to go, or what they need to do to get there? What process do you use to identify skills requirements for your job roles? Do you use a process that benchmarks it against anything, a particular scale? The SCQF can provide that scale because we already have it, a benchmarking tool for learning. It makes sense when learning and development are so interlinked that you can use the same tool to support people's skill and experience progression as well. So, the SCQF and workforce development. The SCQF can help you fully recognise your employees' skills and experience so that you can really get to know what your employees are capable of and what level they're functioning at and where they can go next. It helps you identify the skills gaps. Where might you need to buy in some training, develop some training, do some on-the-job experience for people to help them move up. It'll help you find the most appropriate in-house or external training and help people develop those career pathways so they can see where they can go within your organisation and how they can get there. All benchmarked against the one tool that describes learning and also skills and experience development. And it also helps prevent duplicate training. You can also use the SCQF in recruitment and selection as well. It helps you widen out your range of people who will be applying for your roles, who feel that they can apply for your post. If you properly benchmark your roles to the SCQF and then use SCQF levels instead of specific qualifications in your recruitment advertising, just allows people to feel that they can then apply for those roles, and you might be bringing in a whole range of people who have the exact type of skills and experience that you need, but would have been excluded if you were using specific qualifications. Degree or equivalent, hires or equivalent. It also helps you recognise and understand those alternative qualifications out there and the experience that people might be coming to you with. And it helps you write your job specifications and your person specifications. Just a little aside, we run a recognition scheme called SCQF Inclusive Recruiter for those people who are using SCQF levels in their recruitment processes. So if you're interested, then please get in touch and you can become one of our growing family of inclusive recruiters. So everything I've mentioned this afternoon, you can find on our website in the support and support for employers section, but I'll pop a little link in the chat so you've got that, and I'll also pop my email in there as well. So please feel free to get in touch if you want to explore this further. If you think this might be something that could be useful within your organisation, then I would love to hear from you and we can set up a little meeting. But that's enough from me. Let's hear about how this is actually working in practice from Laura Rennie, who runs Arena HR. Laura, I'll pass over to you because you'll be able to explain who you are and what you do much better than I will. Thank you.
That's fine. Thank you so much. Can you see my one slide right now? Because it looks like my pages have changed.
Oh no, we're not. We're just seeing people at the moment.
Oh right, okay. Well, let's just make. Well, that's even better, I suppose.
If you try it again, then if not, then Maureen can help you out.
I'll try it again. That was very odd there. It just sort of stopped working.
The best will, and oh, that something's good's happening. Brilliant. We're seeing it now.
Right, is that it?
That's it. That's perfect.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. If anybody would like to put on their screens, I would really appreciate it, because I like talking to people, and then that way if you get any questions you can just let me know, as opposed to me trying to read this. Thank you, Fiona. Thank you, Lydia. Maureen. That way if you get any questions, just Lisa, hi, anybody just jump in and ask a question, because I'm trying to do the slides, do the presentation and keep an eye in the chat box, so I do appreciate it. So as Nicola said, my name's Laura Rennie and I'm the founder of Arena HR. We're an HR outsourced consultancy, and recently we also created a training academy to really get all our training programs accredited, funnily enough, through the SCQF, well, with the SCQF at the back of it. And this is where we started kind of getting more involved with becoming an inclusive recruiter and teaching our clients how to do that alongside working with SCQF. And then we took it further and now we're doing it through our workforce development as well. That's just our hashtags. Some of our clients, so that's just a wee group of them. You can see there that we work with private organisations and some public sector organisations as well. We're on a number of approved suppliers lists, which is quite handy when they want something put in place. You'll recognise some of the places that are out there. So we have taken this programme to kind of increase our services as well. So what we generally do is we help with employment law, tricky and complex situations, help with recruitment and selection for any client, whether it's your first employee or a bigger programme. We've got training and workforce development, so we can help with training or just how to plan your workforce development, and then any change programmes or projects. So as Nicola was talking about COVID earlier and the lockdown, we were going through a number of redundancy processes with our clients for obvious reasons. However, we like to do positive change programmes too, so we're here if you're going to need any of that kind of thing. But in terms of today, SCQF, what we've been involved in is we are supporting our organisations that we work with through becoming inclusive recruiters, or once they're inclusive recruiters. We'll help them with their advertising, so we'll keep them right from an employment point of view, and we can help them with their selection process. But the thing that's really exciting is the new job levelling tool that we've been introduced to, and we've been using that to help our clients benchmark their roles, have that consistency in job descriptions, because job descriptions are one of those things that you might create when you're putting a job advert out, but maybe not necessarily be in consistent approach with other departments. So we're making sure that it's got that consistent approach, and we use it as a key element for performance management. We also have created job levelling champions within organisations, and they'll have more awareness on the process, which has been really good, and they are there to kind of create a base job line template for the job description within an organisation when we first get it set up. So that's working out quite well. And then we've done individual one-to-ones with each individual to identify the right role, because sometimes you'll find a group of people doing the same job might think they're at a different role because of their own experiences, not necessarily the roles, it's the experience you need for the role. So that's quite interesting dynamic. So it's quite good because I'm completely impartial, so I just look at it as this is what the role is. So you just have to be really careful with that, because people are very protective of their role, and that's right. And then we also have agreed with the competencies around each of the competencies that you'll see set out, like the scope of work you can see in that framework. We help the clients agree objectives against that role, against the competency. So that was quite interesting, because it's a very generic statement that's within the job role for that, like, level 9 scope of work, what it says there. So what does that mean for each role? Because each role is going to be different potentially. So that was quite a big piece of work, but it was actually a really beneficial one, because it allowed you to see what you needed to be able to do to get up to the next level. So that was, I mean, they really do love it, to be fair, do love it, because it's a very clear structure. And then obviously we went taking it further and used it for their PDPs and their career management. So if you've got an organisation that's trying to be a bit more forward thinking and have a succession plan and keep that retention level high, then this is a really good framework for you to use to show the person, the plan would be for you to be doing the next level by this particular point. That would be the plan. There is some roles that's not the option. The option is this role will always be at this level, and if you want to increase your own professional development, then it might still be in a different role. However, that's still quite good with the framework, because you can see what other roles are at that higher level. So that worked really well with the organisations that we've introduced it with. In terms of feedback, the feedback we got, and I've just noted this, and again, I can share this framework, more than happy to share the framework with anybody. They felt it was good having the champions internally for any points of clarity, so they weren't always coming externally or having to go on a website or maybe even contacting Nicola and saying, what does that mean? Because it was quite niche to that client, to that organisation. So that was good, having a champion that was internally. They all really liked the framework. They thought it was great. That was the sort of benchmark. They said great. So that was like the kind of making the top one. Great framework to use as guidance for PDP discussions. So we had the framework and the various information under each level, and then they would sit and have a shaped conversation, because we would go through each of the competencies and how that related to their job, and then the objectives that set with it. So it was a really good. If you've ever had a PDP, I don't know if anybody wants to share, but if you've ever done a PDP and you say, well, how do you think you're getting on? Unless there's a guidance there, you could end up sitting there talking about anything that's not relevant. Or if you've got a very structured framework, you could miss things. So it's I find it quite a broad framework to use, but at the same time, it can be specific to the role, which they really liked it. And I'm very happy, because the one I've just recently went through it with, they now want to become an inclusive recruiter. So they want to get the accreditation and go through the process for that, which is fantastic longer term, because it means they're starting to talk in this SCQF leveling tool language. So when they're starting to recruit, they're no longer going to be looking for somebody that has a HND in accountancy, for example. It will be potentially an HND in accountancy or equivalent. And instead of just saying, well, what does equivalent mean? They're now saying an HND in accountancy or equivalent, which is, and then they'll put in the detail around about that level for that role at a level 8, I think HND is, off the top of my head. Don't quote me on that though, I would need to look at the framework for what it is. But that kind of idea, which has been a lot better, because when you recruit somebody and you're looking for the equivalent, what your definition of equivalent is and what my definition is could be different. So it's a really good tool for that. And overall, they felt more valued, and the engagement levels were definitely more increased because it was a shaped conversation. And I think as well, they've seen that the business has taken the staff's PDP more valuable, because really, when we started this process, there was some negativity around PDPs and how it's a tick box exercise and you put it in the drawer, whereas this is very, although it's generic for the job tool, when you start and have the conversation with the individual, it's very specific to their role. And they've seen, the one I'm talking about in particular, this organisation most recently, they were feeling more valued because the organisation had almost like taken it seriously, because it wasn't just a bog standard tool that you can use. It can be developed to become more specific for the organisation. So that's pretty much what I was going to cover in terms of generic stuff. But if anybody's got any questions, I'm more than happy to answer anything just now, because I have got some time. I've got my email address and my mobile, and I have got the business Twitter accounts on there, but similar to you, Nicola, I'm not so hot on Twitter, but I'm on LinkedIn, that's true. But if anybody wants to drop me an email or phone me or has got any questions just now, then I'd be more than happy to talk about it, because this is like my day job, so I'm used to having these types of conversations with people that are like, and how did you make that bit work, and how do we make this bit work? So yeah.
Laura, we've got a question in the chat saying would be good to see an example framework. When you're talking about a framework, are you talking about the levelling tool, or have you taken that further?
Yeah, we've taken it further. So we have taken it and then chopped it up and then put it back together again. But sorry, I could have shared it with you.
No, it's fine.
The business is on it, so I will probably have to get their permission to share.
Yep.
But yeah, we used the tool that you guys have got, and we started off with that, but then we chopped it up to make it specific for that organisation. And then when I'm talking about in particular, they had a very lengthy tick box. So what I did to keep everybody happy, I suppose, as best I could, is we used a tool in this tool, but what we did was I took like the pre-discussion section and I kept that in. So the organisation liked their, which is fair enough and it makes sense, and I agreed. They had their values of the organisation, and they had a particular model I called a gap analysis of where you are and where you want to be. So I gave that still out to the employees for them to still do their gap analysis and evaluate themselves or benchmark themselves against the core values of the organisation. So do you think your entrepreneurial was one of the values? And if you do, give us an example. So there was a pre-discussion session that individuals did by themselves so that they're prepared to come in to their one-to-one. So that part of the framework is the old organisationals. I've just made it a wee bit prettier by putting it together, and then after that it's the job tooling that we've cut and pasted and moved over, and it's then at the very end we've got a plan at the end of what do you need to do to secure yourself at level 9, for example, or what do you need to do to progress to level 10, or do you just continue on level 6? That's what the job is, that's where you're at and you're happy with that. And what kind of development could we do? You know, what kind of, because you need people that are comfortable staying in the particular level that they're in as well. So you might well be like, right, I'm on a level 7 and I'm happy and I don't want to go any further. So what can we do as an organisation to keep you engaged? And it might well be that they're motivated by something else, but it's valuing their opinion on it. That's key, and taking a note on that and not trying to put a square peg, you know, into a round hole and go, right, you must fit into that, when actually, no, you're sitting comfortably at whatever level we've said this role is. So let's see what else we can do to keep you engaged. And it might well be that, do you know what, they just needed that one-to-one conversation, and it's quite good that they've got an internal person available, but they've also got an external person that's completely, like, I'm totally independent, for example, in this circumstance. So sorry I missed that. That's the thing with the chat, you can't actually have a look at
don't worry. That's okay, that's why we've all got various different eyes on it.
I don't know if that actually answers it, but yeah.
Lisa, did that help? Feel free to unmute and just chat, by the way.
Go for it, yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, yeah, that does help. I was just trying to understand what you did within that.
So what kind of organisation do you work for?
Local government.
Yeah, okay. So if it was a local government one, I would, you would have to try and, you probably going to have to use some of the stuff you've already got in place, because there's probably a huge exercise to create the thing that you've got. But like, I used to work in local government, and that was part of my role, was to look at, it was called career management at the time. So I took the career management framework. I hope it's not the same local government you're in, sorry if it is. But no, I took the local government's framework that they use, because it was absolutely a tick box exercise. So I spent a year and a half reviewing it and interviewing all the staff and finding out, and it literally just, and it went in a drawer. So I did present to the board that it wasn't fit for purpose, and I gave them recommendations but I didn't know about this because I absolutely would have gave them this, because this we're talking 9 or 10 years ago, so we created another kind of version of it, but I do think the job leveling tool, the terminology, the fact you can use it for recruitment, it's a lot better than just a bolt on to your day job. You know, it's part of your job role, it's part of the job description, it's part of your recruitment adverts. You know, it's a wider, it's not just an additional bolt on to your current system.
Provides an integrated framework throughout everything that you're doing. Yeah,
it can do. There's a bit of work in it, Lisa. There's definitely a bit of work there, but it's worth it, I think.
Laura, would you be okay to stop sharing just so we can maybe see a few more faces?
Oh,
and
sorry.
Fiona, you've got your hand up.
Yep, I was just going to ask a question, Laura. I think you briefly mentioned it in your presentation, but see the people where you've introduced this new PDP and this new sort of way of doing things, do they enjoy it? Do they find it's more beneficial?
Yeah, the feedback was that they felt more valued, and it felt more like a kind of expert was the terminology. It was like an expert tool. It wasn't like somebody's used it in the past or somebody's used it in a different organisation and bolted it on. I think there's a lot of credibility by using an organisation like SCQF's. Does that make sense? You know, it's an accreditation body, so you've got a bit of clout already. You're reputable. So I think that helped, but I also would say there was a lot of time spent, and the one that I'm using is this example, I'm just going to keep it to that one. There was a lot of time spent with the champions, figuring out who the champions were going to be. We did have a couple of people who were like, oh, here we go again, what's this? Like, that's any change management process, you could call that, change, no, don't want to be changing. But we knew who that was going to be already, because we knew the clients, so we knew, and the managers knew who it was going to be. So one of them became the champion, and we managed to turn them around. One still not like a big advocate, but understands why they do it and still appreciates it. But I wouldn't say that it going out there going, yeah, it was brilliant, whereas it was far more positive from other people. So I think that's maybe a personality thing than actually this tool. But yeah, the value was higher from the feedback we got, value and engaged. That was the two highest. They felt more value and more engagement.
Thanks.
Okay. Then I'm sorry about a good example. I know, I never thought of that. I should have done that.
Don't worry, it's not a problem. It's something that if people wanted to maybe take up with you, then would you be okay for them to contact you?
As long I get, well, I can take I could change it into something a bit more standard, because it's pretty obvious who the client is, but yeah.
But the point is, we provided the generic tools that are there to then, you can then take those and make them relevant to your job roles, to your organisation, because every organisation is different, particularly if you're working in local authority as well. You have such a huge range of job roles within a local authority, some of which you will require very specific qualifications to do, some of which are far more open. But it's a really helpful tool. We've already got the framework that's underpinning the majority of learning that's happening in Scotland.
Yeah.
To us, it makes sense. So what we're to then move on to have that framework also underpinning our understanding of people's skills and experience, so that they can develop themselves should they want to. As Laura was saying, some people are absolutely happy being where they are, but some people want to continue up through the levels and see where they can get to. So the tools are there. What we're trying to do is change the language around recruitment, around workforce development, start to help the whole population understand themselves in terms of SCQF levels, rather than these very specific qualifications where the gold standard has always been the academic, the route up to a degree, whereas there's learning, there's a huge range of experience that people have out there, but they maybe do not have a degree to show it. And quite often people that I've worked with who are working up at those upper levels, I'm thinking of one person in particular who has 1 O grade in arithmetic taken a long time ago. This person is now working up at easily SCQF level 11. He wanted me to put it on a t-shirt for him. I think I'd probably get in big trouble with management if I did that. But the difference it made to him, because he's always, even though he's working at a hugely high level, he has always felt that he was lacking in those qualifications. So it's a great tool to really help change people's idea of themselves and their self-worth, not being through these very specific qualifications, but really recognising everything that they can bring to job roles. Does anybody have any more questions? Anything you'd like to find out a wee bit more about? It's a lot of information all coming at you at the one time, so please feel free if you want to. My email address is in the chat. You'll find me on the SCQF website. Please feel free to get in touch. And Laura has also shared her email with you as well. And I don't want to speak for you, Laura, but I'm sure you said you were okay for people to get in touch with you as well. So if you would like to look into any further, oh, thank you, Laura's popped it in the chat, then please feel free to get in touch with either of us. And thank you so much for coming along today.
Thanks, guys.